Hello and welcome to Hearth Matters with me, Catherine Lucas Damer, and my co host, the ever lovely Erin Zuma. Today, our guest is Lina Lyte Plioplyte. She's an Emmy Award winning documentary filmmaker whose latest movie, Periodical, really captured our attention. I first met Lina at a small conference a couple of years ago, and I was immediately smitten with her. She's funny, she's smart, and she's one of those special beings who radiates joy and enthusiasm for whatever she's focused on. As she described her latest project, a film about menstruation, I thought to myself, you brilliant woman, why has nobody thought of this before? I mean, frankly, it's shocking how little women know about our own bodies. Do you know the phases of your monthly cycle or when you're ovulating? Do you know what an endometrium is or its superpowers? Oh, and don't worry if not, you're in good company. Until recently, even Western medicine was woefully undereducated on women's health. Understanding and knowing how to work with your own fertility cycle can have a huge impact on your health, your relationships, your productivity, and your overall well being. And it's a powerful way to honor your body's amazing intelligence. This was an enlightening conversation, to say the least. Lena's curiosity and her knowledge, and yes, her infectious enthusiasm, made this one of the liveliest and most fun conversations we've ever had on the show. Enjoy. How's it going with the movie?
Which one?
The
Eh,
periodical.
Periodical's out.
I
Periodical's
know, but how's it going? How's it going with it?
It had very long legs. It's been still shown in festivals. We're doing a doc club discussion tonight. It's like
Oh,
for
cool.
the movie that came out last year in October. This is great how long the discussion and the follow-up and interest continues to be building. So it's really delightful for me to see that it is finding its audience, it's finding its interest, it's expanding in different countries. It's on both Amazon Prime and Peacock, and it's on the different airlines and people
Ooh.
watching it on the airplanes because someone sent me we were in top picks on American Airlines. I'm like, people are daring to watch bloody documentary on the airplane. Hell yes. So
Yeah.
great.
Good
Yeah.
for you. Good for you. I didn't realize it came out in October.
Uh-huh.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It's actually how, you mentioned the documentary discussion you're having tonight. That's actually how Catherine and I met. So it's really interesting the way that these films have a way of bringing people together and how that helps to sort of carry the momentum of the documentary in terms of its reach on forward.
Yes, absolutely. That specifically that it's podcasts, it's different from festivals, different conversations about it. We've been having a lot of menopause conversations, specifically because menopause is such a big part of the film, and I feel like there is the biggest hunger i-
Mhm.
about perimenopause and menopause because, of course, we don't know anything about it.
Yeah. And I'm on the other end of menopause. I'm 61, and there were no resources for me. It's, just piecing it all together. And interestingly, we didn't talk as we were formulating questions for the interview about the movie, we did not we didn't put one question in here about menopause, so we're going to have to throw one in.
Right.
I guess we should start with the basics. What is a period and why do women have them?
Oh, it's not a very straightforward um, answer because we are only part of 4% of mammals that have external menstruation, which is quite a taxing event on a body. And we are also the only ones that have an average period that happens every 28.5 days, which is the same amount of time that full moon graces us in the sky. And whether it's related or not is TBD, according to modern science. And the rest is up for speculation. And I love those speculations very much.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was as I was doing research, I've even read in some places that actually it was women who uh, discovered time as a concept because we found these bones where they were marking off 28 days at a time.
Mm.
and that was how men discovered time. And
Right.
then when they became aware of their own mortality in a new way, and that paternity became a way to extend their mortality into immortality, into infinity. So interesting, the whole who knows? It's all speculation at this point.
And I like the speculation and I like the limitations of modern science. And I like to discuss about this because, oftentimes it's like, right, we did a study with 100 females and we've put them in one room. Are they going to sync up or not? And we're going to prove the myth forever and all, whether it's true or not. Same with the moon. Like, do women have like a new moon as their chosen moon to bleed, or is it a full moon? And we
Right.
all know, I know, I've followed specific paths that in my mind relates to the moon. And again, science likes to be like, we don't see a correlation. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Just like
Right.
with women syncing together, like if is there an alpha female that kicks in your period? I've definitely have stories in my life where women came to me and like, I didn't have my period for 4 months, and then we hung out for a weekend, and I'm bleeding.
Mhm.
You were bleeding, and that must mean something. I believe that we live in such a reductionist scientific paradigm that you can't prove these things with the tools that we have scientifically. Thus, I like using anthropology and I like looking at what the indigenous communities have discovered. And there's plenty of stories through anthropologists where they say that, women in a specific tribe would come together and bleed together and have these menstrual parties, if you
Mm.
will. And also, this was with a Native American tribe here in Northern California, where if a woman didn't have her period, they would sit her down in a light of a full moon, kind of bring back that period. And women sinking together was seen as a spiritual privilege for
Mm.
women to do this together. And then, we have stories in India where women bleed together and are kind of shunned away. But like, even if patriarchy gives us this kind of like, you can't sleep in the same bed with your husband and can't cook for your husband when you're bleeding because perhaps you're deemed dirty or whatnot for the religion, women coming together and meditating on the world peace together while they bleed seems to me to be not only this mystical and beautiful event, but also empowering event,
Mm.
you
Ye
know?
Yeah, and instead of trying to be in the world during your there's 2 phases of your cycle when you're pretty sensitive, but especially during your menses, trying to show up in the public sphere and do market economy work when really maybe we would be so much more valuable to our culture if we were allowed to go sit in that red tent and be sensitive beings, being intuitive, empathic beings. Because I think that's part of the reason we get cranky around our period. At least that was my observation when I was younger, is that I was cranky if I had to go do a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do. I was fine if I was home by myself. And I
Totally.
think I would have been fine in a red tent with other women. By the way, where does the red tent idea come from? Is that what culture is that? Do you know?
Different. I know that Native Americans here in the United States have had that tradition of hanging out. I've hung out with some red tent, moon tent
Mm.
uh, traditions in Lakota specifically. But seems to me that there are different places like that in the world. They just call different names. And now I feel like the white culture wants to be participating in that as well, perhaps to help reclaim it because it just feels so valuable to come together and be together, which
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think we had that concept previously to do this. Why would you want to do such a weird thing? Really? This
And you know
weird
what?
thing.
I have a couple of girlfriends who live down in Brazil and Peru. And I don't know what tradition they're following, but they both, I think it's a Native American tradition in an indigenous tradition in Peru, but they both wear a little red flags around their waist. Yeah, it's like a belt and it has little flags on it, like little pieces of cloth. And they tie it on, and for 3 days they go into a room somewhere in their house or somewhere on their property. They don't talk to anybody and they fast. And they might have a little bit of soup every day, but they do it for 3 days every month. They stop their lives. And one is a gynecologist in Lima.
Mm.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant.
Women can make it work. I've never done that, but and now I don't have to. Anyway, it's an interesting idea for sure.
Very much. And I've seen these red cloths, not necessarily, I like this flag idea, but I've seen in many a culture, mostly I'm thinking of Mexico and Guatemala and same Peru, where you wear a red belt and you wear it specifically for ayahuasca ceremonies when you're bleeding as an extra protection because shaman acknowledges that you are more open for
Mhm.
everything while you're going through a psychedelic spiritual journey, especially when you're bleeding. So I also remember them paying attention that a bleeding woman would sit next to a woman to be
Mhm.
protected from both sides in the circle by a female energy while she's wearing a red belt that also serves as a spiritual protection. So, again, science. Well,
It's
Fascinating.
interesting. I was in a ceremony in Peru where a woman who was one of the helpers had to step away because she started her period. So she was no longer able to assist.
Uh-huh.
So
And
it really
same with Sundance. When you dance in Sundance with Lakota, if you get your period, you don't dance. Sundance, even though Sundance is such a big year-long preparation, you sew your own dresses for all 4 days of Sundance, of dancing, of fasting, right? But I remember asking a chief, why is that so? And the notion is that woman is very powerful when she's on her menstruation, and thus she can overpower a ceremony itself with her power. Which I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Wow.
Because our mind wants to be like, is this patriarchy? Like, what is this? I'm like, as a white feminist, I'm always poking at systems I don't understand and don't know and try to, imagine how it's all patriarchy. But I realize it's so much more complex often.
Right. It's almost an acknowledgement of the biological superpower. So
Uh-huh.
it's sort of this reverse of how we think of patriarchy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
fascinating to say the least.
yes, yes.
Very much so. Wow. Well, Lena, I would love to know how you relate to the movie. I mean, one of the themes that comes through is where you're portraying how periods have been stigmatized in our culture to the point where many of us don't know much about our own biology and why we have these cycles, how they affect the way in which we move through the world. So, curious about yourself. How and when did you learn about your own fertility? And how much of the information in the film was stuff that you knew before you started the project?
Mm, great question. I don't have a horror story with menstruation, which that would be a good reason to delve into this. The whole idea of making a film started with writing in my diary, as I do, and I had written something that ended up being an ode to the body that bleeds, and I
Mm.
was mesmerized by the fact that we do bleed and the fact that we do so much on our period. And what a strange thing from bloating to kind of a different dream world that I personally feel much more connected when I bleed. And that indeed internal slowdown that I did not quite comprehend before really delving into the research of the film. Now clear as a bright day that we are on this very clear wave, very clear to us, not very clear to masculine that doesn't have that estrogen prolonged wave. But I was just, this is something marvelous event happening. And somehow we're not supposed to talk about it. And that to me was the greatest, like, but why?
Mhm.
Like it felt as if it's a even bigger taboo than, speaking about your body odor out loud or the fact that you want to go to the bathroom. This was like, you cannot speak about that. Like
Mhm.
it's it felt like it's a deadly sin. There's blood that is the only blood that comes out without violence.
Mm.
And that blood is absolutely misunderstood by the other half of the population who don't have such an experience of bleeding, not because they were punched in the nose or cut themselves with a knife, right?
Mhm.
This is just a natural blood that comes out. And it's funny because it's not even, when you see a dog woman, a bitch bleed, that's a sign of her being in ovulation. That's
Right.
not a sign of dog's menstruation, the way that we experience menstruation. So it's like, we don't we don't even have what to compare it with, because only a few other animals that do bleed are some species of bat, an elephant shrew, a specific ape, maybe chimpanzees, and someone else. Like, it's really not that many examples of why, because say a giraffe has an estrus cycle, but giraffe's body absorbs the uterine lining back into the body because it's so nutritious. It's just our body that every 4 weeks sheds the uterine lining with all of its nutrients and stem cells just
Hmm.
to build it back in 2 weeks. I mean, think about the potential of the fountain of youth, of regenerating tissue that every month without failing rebuilds itself, rebuilds itself, rebuilds itself for 35, 40 years of that woman's life. Insanity. Like, what a magic thing is this? So I think these little things started really fascinating me, and I'm like, I would love to make a story about this. I just, how what is this? I'm just that person who loves Wikipedia. Like, I love asking weird questions and finding answers on Google and all that sort of stuff. The moment I found that there is a budding activism movement about menstruation, driven, of course, by postmenopausal women and baby girls, I was like, okay, I think there's something more to this, because then you start seeing that there's politics relating to this. There are crazy ass laws that no woman would have ever written into the law. It clearly was written, like tampon tax. It was written because those who are in law making positions never thought about how a bleeding body works.
Mm.
Literally never crossed their mind. And a lot of mostly Republicans, shall we say, lawmakers still have no idea, how many holes are in there. And the fact that we are not just like able to withhold a period, like you say, when you want to pee, you can hold the pee and then you go to the bathroom and release it. Oh, we did not know that you cannot do that with your period, that you cannot just hold it in until you find the nearest bathroom. So it's just like funny holes in sexual education, which I'm not even blaming men for, because honestly, the boys were kicked out of the educational rooms when was the time to talk about
Yeah.
the menstruation. So they never had a chance to actually understand, unless you're like, dear girlfriend, how exactly does it work? Does every girlfriend know that answer? Probably no.
No.
Exactly. For me, it was like, whoa, this is such a funny, convoluted gap of knowledge that continued for the last 2,000 years, since, the Greeks and the Romans, who proclaimed that, when a bleeding woman walks down the field, the flowers wilter and die and dogs howl. So it was like, okay, so this is still the stigma that we need to work through. It's that stigma
Mhm.
from 2,000 years ago, which is
Right.
ridiculous, really. So I feel like this is just last 5, 10 years, I would say, that we have just enough data, just enough curiosity, and science finally turned into this body, this female body that we're like, so complex. It has too many hormones. There's too many X's and Y's going on. Man's body is beautiful, clear, simple thing. So let's base everything in science on that. And a woman is like a small man, just with this weird hormone thing that we don't understand. Woman is a mystery. Woman is erratic. Woman cannot be a president. Thank you very much. So they're just while they're doing that, and
Yeah.
like period is a very good, as Buckminster Fuller would say, trim tab that lets us look into this huge issue through one little monthly event that half of the world's population going through.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, the sex education gap, as you're pointing out, it exists for men just as it does for women. I am embarrassed to admit I was 30 years old before I could name all four stages of a menstrual cycle. And I asked
He
my
just turned 30, by the
I
way.
just turned 30. But
You
it
learned it
was
in your
really by
movie.
virtue of watching your film that I went, okay, now I can commit this to memory. And for the last year or so, my husband was poking fun at me, knowing that I couldn't answer his question. He knew that I didn't know the four stages by heart.
Forever.
And then after I saw your film, I asked my 18-year-old sister, hey, do you know that your menstrual cycle happens in 4 stages? And she is much closer to sex ed class than I, right? I thought, okay, well maybe I was taught about it and I just forgot. And I just, leaned into the market economy that says we do everything we can to overcome our period. So it's just this nuisance. And we don't actually have to think about our lives in terms of our hormonal stages. And so my asking her was a way of testing that hypothesis. And no, it's just the fact that it's just not taught. We're not fully educated on the experience of womanhood. And so it's, we really can't, to a certain degree, expect men to know any better if we don't know our own bodies.
Yeah.
It's truly awe-inducing, a little sad, but at the same time, I think it's the time ripe for opportunity because I see through the film how knowledge builds empathy. What a
Hmm.
beautiful empathy machine this film has been, and especially showing this in schools, showing this for teenagers, and showing it in co ed groups. I've seen so many boys with eyes lit up being like, I think my mom is going through this menopause thing that you're showing in the film that, of course, I've never heard about before. Them being like, oh, and in the film, we call it the reverse puberty in reverse. And then it's like, maybe give your mom some slack. Maybe give your mom some joy. Because she's going through something. I've
Yeah.
seen that switch. I've seen that light go on multiple times after the film. And I'm so happy that we can be part of that movement. Teaching young boys about menopause. What a delightful byproduct of this film that I did not think about when we were, starting this journey.
I was leading a company. I'd founded a company and I was a CEO and I'd be at board and the company grew to be a big national brand and I'm going through menopause and I'd be at a board meeting and I've got a lot of Scandinavian and so I turn bright red when I'm embarrassed and when I'm having a hot flash. There's no hiding that I'm having a hot flash. And I mean literally I would sweat and I was so terrified. My heart rate would go up because it's like, they're not gonna take me seriously because my biology is on display here. And I would have almost a panic attack about it whenever it would happen. And like, I knew if I had sugar or anything in a meeting, it would happen more. So I learned how to moderate it, but still, I wish that I could have been more comfortable with it. I
Mm,
wish that I'd lived in a culture that was like, "Oh," instead of just women say, "Oh, we're having a power surge." That's what we joke about, but you can't really joke about that in a board meeting where you're the only woman. And so I think a lot of women are reaching some level of professional career, uh
Hi. Yeah.
yeah, thank you, at that age. At the same time, you're going through menopause, and it's a really interesting time because also once you're kind of through it and you really stop your menses, I've done some research on it. I mean, testosterone goes up, estrogen goes down, our voices get deeper, and we're badasses. And it's almost like it's an energetic that's not utilized in our culture. Women my age coming together and being helpful to the generation coming up behind us. And that's what I'm constantly preaching to women my age. Like, this is not the time to be like trying to act like a maiden and getting a ton of plastic surgery or retiring and going on, cruises. It's all tempting, but this is the time that we're supposed to be showing up for the generation behind us. And now that we don't have our menses anymore and we've got a little more testosterone that makes us a little less agreeable, we're able to fight the good fight in a way that maybe we couldn't when we were more sensitive. I'm definitely not as sensitive as I was when I had my period. I'm definitely less sort of like, you don't like it, that's fine." You
That's
know?
right.
I'm
That's
not
right.
afraid of taking things on. So it's a powerful time in a woman's life, and yet we carry it around as though it's shame.
Well, that's just like a funny, yet another trick of patriarchy. I believe that all of the revolutions have been done by menopausal women and by teenage girls, literally, like everywhere you look, from suffragettes to the pink hats, and like it's literally been fueled by those groups of women. So isn't it funny that the invisible woman comes in right at 50, 51, 55, and then, as you say, there is this like, oh no, the youth is leaving me. How can we preserve our looks or pretend it's not happening, instead of like, fuck yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And mothers aren't doing that because mothers, you're looking inward, right? You're either birthing a company or you're birthing children. And so your focus is different. And then so at my age you're done raising your children for the most part, so you can look outward. And we do have so much in common with teenagers. I hadn't really thought about it like that because they're looking forward, we're looking retrospectively. And we both have the energy to be thinking about culture and the bigger pictures, the bigger picture of life, where women are more focused on more of the micro, the family or the birthing of a company or an idea or a movie. So it's really interesting. I'd never thought about it like that, Lena.
It's funny. It's funny how many circular motions are there in the film, within the film, within a bleeding body, within all of us, that in nature, like you start looking, it's all circular. And I think we forgot to think circularly. Again, I would like to bring the scientific revolution and the straightforwardness, the arrow like being and growth of capitalism, and all of us that seemingly have a direct line from birth to death. And it's like this, where really, if you ask any pagan, we're doing this
Mm.
constantly. And I think every menstruation is mark of that. Every ovulation is mark of that. Every full moon is mark of that. So it's like if we adapt spiral like thinking or circular thinking, then all of this makes sense.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. It's all part of the cycle of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cycle of life.
Well, going back to the taboo, I was thinking a lot about why is it called a curse? Why is Menzies called a curse? And I'm wondering, can you just say a little bit more about why you think in your research, what are some of the factors that led to our Menzies being such a taboo? Where do you think that shift really occurred?
Right. I remember that every single world's major religion deems menstruation dirty.
Mm.
So again, like you look at why. I don't know. We were trying to look at the Bible. Was there reasons that the God was cursing a woman and saying that you're gonna carry children in pain and whatnot?
Yeah, when Eve was thrown out of the Garden of Eden,
Right.
she was cursed with that. For yeah.
Right. Like, does that relate to that? Because we know that menses and childbearing somehow are related, even though we've only discovered ovulation scientifically 100 years ago, apparently. But I'm sure our ancestors knew that there's a correlation between a girl and a woman, and it has to do with blood between her legs. And so, is it too carnal? Is it too lively that we need to shun it and say, don't come back to your husband until you took the cleansing bath, mikvah in Judaism, right?
Right.
Like think about every single religion that you know of. I think Rastafarians are the only ones who like, you know. But I do believe that there is some kind of a power that we knew menstruation to have. We were absolutely terrified of it or mystified by it. And thus we said, no, thank you. You go deal with your woo woo, strange, devilish thing there. Right. Because I know that ancient Egyptians saw in that kind of a sorcerer realm, saw menstrual fluid as one of the top powerful fluids to make magic with. You
Mm.
know, the other one is sperm, obviously. But so it's like there's something about it that is or scary, or we know its power, thus we push it away. I mean, I feel the same has been done in bounding women in big black cloth or binding their feet together so they don't walk fast enough, or even corsets, right? Where we bound you for or not allow you something because we want to control you in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I found most fascinating while I was doing research, and you've already talked about the uterine lining, I think it's called the endometrium, is that it regrows each month, as you said. if it's not needed to support life, but it also is like a remarkably intelligent. Scientists know that it can recognize when a fertilized egg is not healthy enough to bring to term, or it can also, if it does, if an embryo does attach, it's communicating with the embryo, telling the mother what nutrients that embryo needs. And as you mentioned, it's like ripe with stem cells. So in some strange way, indigenous people who had no science to show them this knew how remarkable the blood is from the endometrium. So do you think if women understood, and I'm assuming this is why you did the movie, if they understood how incredibly special that blood is that's exiting their body every month, do you think that it might be easier for them to bear? Because periods
Absolutely.
are hard.
In every single way, I feel like we would reframe this nuisance that happens to us that suddenly doesn't allow me to go on the planned date or doesn't allow me to wear those white jeans that I so wanted so much. And this menstruation came and ruined my favorite pair of panties, right? Uh, as we sell the period still as being just this thing that happens to us and yikes and gross. Or, every single most majority of gynecologists that will just give you contraception at any sign of, oh, it's irregular, oh, it gives me zits, oh, my hormones are strange. Here's the pill. And what the pill does, it shuts your ovulation down. It pretends that your body is always pregnant. I'm like, sounds convenient. However, there is some kind of a natural his mystery happening there that I think we can tap into. We just need to break through our own conditioning. Of course, I'm not saying that menstruation is always pleasant. I think for majority of us, it's not. And for 10% of us, it's horribly painful, ridiculously and, job stoppingly painful. I'm speaking about endometriosis, that 10% of those who bleed experience, and we still barely know how it works. We still have some theories, but not necessarily one ultimate truth. And the only way we know how to do it is just scrape it off when we open your vagina or your belly or whatever it is growing, and then it regrows. We literally have no idea how to take care of it in the Western methods that would heal us. It's a chronic condition, and so you just end up living in pain for all of your menstruation years. So there's something to be said of, sure, it is nuisance. Yes, we can learn to look at the nuisance in a non-nuisansical way, and there's a lot of disorders and issues and traumas and pain that we've been denied of dealing. It's menstruation. How much you're bleeding? Normal. Just take Advil. We don't even know what's normal amount of blood to bleed. We just know that if you're changing 6 tampons a day, maybe that's a bit too much. But there is no like a simple, okay, 2 cups a day, 2 menstrual cups that is normal. Have a cup of, like there is no a clear little one sheet that is what's normal, what's not normal. Worry about this, don't worry about that. And we've been always said, just shove some kind of a pain medicine up your face and again go back to work. And what if you're laying on the floor, bleeding, vomiting, passing out from pain? While we're doing interviews in the film, holy smokes, so many stories from both fibroids and endometriosis of excruciating pain every month that knocks you out, puts you absolutely down. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about menstruation. For me personally, I learned to befriend my cycle. I've learned to be gentle to my inner bitch and the little girl that comes out every luteal phase, every PMS. Not every, so depends again, which is why like science with 3 markers of data could never answer this. All I know is that if I've been super stressed or if I've been eating a lot of sugar, my PMS probably will be stronger, and my PMS will be, fuck you, fuck this world, everything goes to, I want to leave now. Nonsense, bullshit, I'm going to burn this down. But once I've learned through early research phases of this film that, PMS happens to 85% of bleeding bodies, And it's a 2-day event. It's a 2-day event that happens because your estrogen's coming down from your ovulation, and progesterone, if it doesn't rise fast enough or rises too much, instead of getting cozy and I just want a sweet potato and a hot bath, you become this crying puddle of Frank. But if you know it's only 2-day event, don't make hard decisions. It's gonna come, it's gonna go. It's 2 days. Listen to what the inner bitch or little desperate girl tries to tell you, but don't act on it. Don't quit the boyfriend. Don't quit the school. Don't quit
Mhm.
job. It's gonna 2 days. We can do it. 2 days. What does your body need? What kind of stew? What kind of hot bath? What kind of brownie? Whatever, you need to source this that is happening. That's the first step of becoming friends, of hormonal waves, right? It's knowledge of what's happening and maybe why it's happening, but most importantly, that it happens and it's going to pass. And then the menstruation itself, which is I'm a cramper. Majority of us are, and that's again your body just trying to kind of cramp those walls so that uterine lining falls off easier. So your body just like go. And I had once an experience in the bath where I was just laying in the bath in pain, and I realized that I'm entering some kind of really interesting meditation stages that would not be available to me if not this kind of numbing pain. So I was like, maybe I don't want to numb the pain if I can survive it. If it's not debilitating, like I'm puking with pain kind of thing, but if it's uncomfort and it puts me in some kind of a more dream-like space in which I hear the world differently. Maybe I hear the messages. Maybe I hear creativity differently. And as a creativity nerd, and I'll do anything to optimize my creativity. Now we're talking. Like now we're entering into the place where menstruation is not, and the whole cycle is not nuisance, but it's very clear waves. And if we learn how to surf it, we can optimize ourselves, not just to be a better human, but honestly, to be a more creative person, a better worker, a better lover, a better society member. And I'm 100% positive that's what menstruation cycle is here to teach us if we want to go from this nuisance, let's ignore it, into, oh, tell me more. Pay attention more to what's happening each week of my cycle. What do I each week of the cycle? How do I want to sleep each week of my cycle? Do I want to have sex, or am I zitty and bloated and, like, where am I? And I believe that just using tracking app, or I've tracked my period manually for years and years and years. You get so much simple insight that is subtle, but no gynecologist will tell you that. You have to do the listening part. And I love that. I love that menstruation brings us back to listen to your own body. Like, yes, you can Google things. Yes, you can go to the doctor and they will prescribe you something. But this is an entirely listening exercise. How do I feel a day after my period? That day that I very clearly feel like it's a spring coming out of the winter, where you're suddenly like, okay, I'm not kind of sluggish, sweatpant wearing, mountain troll. All of a sudden, I'm like, I want a salad. I want something fun. I want to go for a jog. All of a sudden, right? And it's like suddenly you have this week in which you're like, oh, I can learn a language easier. Oh, I can take care of this thing with my website that I couldn't be able to deal with. And then comes ovulation, which is literally your face is more symmetrical than ever. Your oratory skills are at their the most optimal. And you're literally glowing this thing that everyone else can feel, and you can feel it too because you feel more voluminous. Isn't that the perfect time to host any kind of party you want to host? Have a big gathering, go on every date you always wanted to, and go ask for a raise.
Yeah, great.
Right. Like if our culture acknowledged it, then we could start building new types of workplaces for each other.
Well, there has been examples of uh, female-centric workplaces that do acknowledge each other's cycles and where they are, and when is the week for you to deal with your emails and the admin, and when it's a week to give a presentation and go sell this thing and go do the marketing campaign. Absolutely. And I'm like, I understand where patriarchy could be very crazy about us understanding this because this is power. This is riding your own cycle. I'm absolutely in love with this. And it's like when we speak about biohacking and all of the fasting and the cold plunges and, all of the weird vitamins that the longevity community prescribes to each other. I'm like, this is the perfect biohacking device. It's to your own body. And just no
Mhm.
one told us about it. And it's, oh, we can optimize ourselves literally without even one pill or one cold bath, even though I love the cold plunges, just by listening.
Right.
By listening and providing to what body wants, which is typically 2 weeks of external energetic, powerful, go, go, go execution, which is spring and summer, right? The week after your menstruation and the week of ovulation. This is based on the 28.5-day average cycle. Each woman has her own normal. Like you find how those 4 stages show up for you. And then after the ovulation, we have the luteal, which is up to 10 days. And that's where our egg came out and is degrading in our body because probably didn't meet the right suitor. And this is when we're going to be like, okay, I don't want to go out to the party anymore. And it's okay. And it's 2 weeks of internal, 2 weeks of different wisdom to listen to, 2 weeks of indeed like cuddling and watching movies. And I find those 2 weeks, the internal weeks, I'm just entering my luteal as we speak. Those are the best 2 weeks of creative work. Those are the best 2 weeks of what do I want to do in this life? How do I want to show up? What's my big why? Rewriting a book or a movie proposal or this and that. I find those 2 weeks to be so powerful nowadays. Where I used to have a weird FOMO as a 20 and 30-year-old, something. Oh, I don't want to go out, but we must go out because the world will crumble if we don't. And now I'm like, oh no 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 no. Now I'm gonna bake my own brownies, and I'm gonna sit with delightful literature that I want to soak myself in, and I will feel very different when I do so. I want to be with my movies. I want to be with all of the things that is my woman cave. And I'm delighting in this. And I think it took me how many years am I bleeding here? 20 years, like 17 years of bleeding and of course, making this movie to really own it. But now it's delightful. Like if I don't spend one menstruating day with myself, with my back to the tree, with my butt onto the ground, then I'm like, I'm missing it. If I'm like, work, work, work on those days, no, you have to listen to something because something is happening. And I don't know what it is, but I know that something is happening. There is all kinds of theories that your two brains are talking better to each other during menstruation. So you are more like spiritually connected to some kind of an invisible threads of life. How
Mm.
scientific is that? I don't care. Check yourself. Like listen to yourself and find it for yourself. Like literally, that's my only answer. Like we all have some kind of a magic internal rivers that are moving through time and space. And we are a little bit different each week. And if we're not listening to this, we're missing out on this amazing optimization tool that is the cycle. And I'm sure, Catherine, for you, there is still some kind of a cycle or connection or something going on, even when the menstrual cycle goes away.
I don't know if there is, honestly. I feel so different. I'm just even.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that's why we're good in leadership at this age,
Uh-huh.
because we don't have those 2 weeks where we need to go and be more
Right.
inward. Because when you are on your menses and you have to show up in a leadership capacity in a company, that's that can be hard. That can be really challenging. Lena, one of the things that we think a lot about with our work is that, which is really focused on the domestic sphere, is that the market economy and the public sphere is where women are supposed to be succeeding. And as we move into like the gig economy age, the digital age, where women and men can work at home, we can start thinking differently about how to build our schedules in our lives. We have and a lot of our work is about reuniting home and work. And so I hadn't put the Menzies piece together until I saw your movie and until you started talking about the fact that, wow, if you did have some sort of a home based business, whatever that is, and so many things are done at home now and will be in the future, you have absolute freedom to design a life that is in alignment with your biology instead of shoehorning your biology into a market economy in the public sphere. And so you've given me new thoughts around this, and so thank you for inspiring a whole we hadn't even brought that up really in our work.
I'm delighted that you can adapt it and see it through your point of view because, again, I think it's one of these trim tabs where it informs so many decisions and spheres in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think the period awareness movement is either driving or linking up with the sort of anti-birth control movement that we're seeing? I mean, I think that on the one hand, Catherine and I talk about this a lot. On the one hand, birth control is a miracle. For a lot of women, it's really been helpful for them in coping with period symptoms. And then obviously there's the utility of being able to control when you have children. But for many women around my age who have maybe been on the birth control pill for 10, 15 years, and they decide it's time for me to get pregnant, now is and I am 8 months pregnant. But so the first, I was that person. I was on birth control for a dozen years and I never really had a why because I always had very light periods. So there was my why was it's what everybody does before they go away to college and they want to start experimenting. And I just stayed on it. And I stopped taking the birth control in anticipation of getting pregnant. And that was such an eye-opening period of time for me, this only 5 months between not being on birth control and becoming pregnant and really getting to know my cycle, and I thought, "Why didn't I know this about myself?" And so, what I see out there in the ether is a lot of women going through that same process where sometimes they come off the birth control and they have a profound shift, right? Life before and after the pill is very, very different because the pill was suppressing their hormones in a it had a great effect on their cycles. That for me, not so much. It was pretty subtle, the difference, but it was it was definitely an eye-opening experience, and so you see more women encouraging, "Hey, if you don't really need the pill from a medical perspective or even from a pregnancy perspective, right? You're not sexually active or you really could look into natural planning." It's interesting to me to sort of relate the two, the way in which once you learn this cycle is really, really powerful, it opens up this new door around, do we need to be taking this pill?
Right. I think exactly what you said. What a liberating little pill this has been. Truly
Mhm. Yeah.
revolutionary. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And at the same time, we totally overused it and abused it for last 40 years. And so I think with enough of information, with enough of understanding how the cycle works and the natural methods and many other methods that have available to us, of course we should think twice. Should everyone have a blanket statement of being on the pill for the rest of their lives and missing out on this beautiful ovulation dance?
Mhm.
Absolutely. I don't like to poop on the pill because pill is vital for a lot of disorders to which we still don't have answers for. And so I know a lot of us endometriosis friends who are put on the pill and that makes their pain lesser. And that's fine. That's absolutely, we have that reasoning and that's totally fine. There's plenty of reasons to use the pill, but then also we are finally just informed enough to have a choice. Do I want to have a pill or not?
Mhm.
And I think that's such a glorious place to be in. You can literally choose. Again, there is no need to diminish the pill or its importance. It's the only need there is to know how the pill works
Right.
and then make an informed decision.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Right, right.
definitely, definitely. Well, and I think both of us had read, Lena, that in traditional foraging societies, the women have about 160 ovulations over the course of their lifetimes. They start their periods later and they tend to have more children than we do in the West. Whereas now, modern American women, because we're starting younger, we don't really know why. We have closer to 450 periods over a lifetime. So, how do you think that it's a tripling of the number of periods we experience? Like, how do you think that has an impact on women's health overall?
Right. Well, that's a huge question, massive question. And in the film, we say that the way we menstruate now, we never menstruated like this in uh, human history because we were pregnant or breastfeeding most of the time. So
Mhm.
you would have probably 3 periods and then you got pregnant again. And then you had a
Right.
breastfeeding moment. So you probably could, between breastfeeding and pregnancy, you could avoid 2 or even maybe 3 years of ovulation again because that magical button in which while you're breastfeeding, you're not having your ovulation back, which I love so much, which is like your body is like, no, 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 we're still working on this, baby. We don't need to
Yeah.
prepare for the next baby. Thank you, body. It's a fascinating question for me because you can look at it in many different ways. Maybe pill is good for us because it stops so many ovulations happen. Who knows? We literally don't know. I'm fascinated by it all. And there's so many things we can't answer. Why are we getting girls age 9 bleeding nowadays? Hormones? Like you can blame a lot of things. There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of things. What we know is that it's happening, right? And same with the diminishing sperm count and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. I remember the theory that because of we're taking so much birth control and we're peeing all of those residues of it into drinking water, which the cleansing plants are not able to remove, is that we all get a bit more estrogen in our bodies, and thus girls get faster, earlier menstruation. But again, it's like we can go any kind of conspiracy theory route. We can do anything we want here.
Yeah.
Uh, all we know is that we are bleeding at 9, sometimes at 8, which to me drives me mad knowing that sex ed doesn't even start at what, 11, 12. So there are
Yeah.
some girls who are bleeding for 3 years and then they get to sit down with their teacher and learn about that. A little annoying, a little old timey. This whole system is ineffective, at least. In some ways, thank God for TikTok and all kinds of internet wisdom. And then at the same time, a slogan wisdom is not expert wisdom.
Yeah.
So we just have to be much more smarter than we've been and much more diligent with information ecology and understanding ourselves. And I think that listening of ourselves again comes in handy to understand your body.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
earlier you start, the better.
I am one of those women who had terrible endometriosis and had to have surgery, and also had terrible fibroids. And I was on the pill. Uh, and my doctor, this was back in the 90s, said, there is this evidence that, not bleeding every month is a good thing. And because it's so hard for you, why don't you consider just maybe having a period 3 times a year?
Mhm.
And that was sort of a thing that, my doctor was really into for a period of time because they also saw higher rates of uterine cancer in women, for instance, who don't have children. I have one son. But in any event, it worked for me. And I don't know, like, did it change my personality? Would I have picked different mates if I hadn't been on the pill?
I
But
wonder.
I will tell you in business, it helped a lot.
Uh-huh.
So I almost feel like the birth control pill goes hand in hand for me with the market economy. I wonder sometimes if the endometriosis, I could have changed some of those issues by looking at other things in my environment that might have been causing the estrogen dominance that was causing some of these issues. So anyway, I just an anecdote that I thought worth sharing because it is interesting that it would in some way replicate what more traditional women were going through.
Yes, it's again, there's such dark woods still, and I think the best is to have enough information to make informed decisions and find what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we want to move more into the socio-political and talk about the period tax because we like
Yeah.
that part of your film.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you return to the period tax movement several times throughout the film. And There have been a few countries recently, I think it's Scotland and maybe New Zealand, who have made period products completely free. So I was curious, two-part question. Why did you feel like it was important to focus on that movement and some of the legislative wins that it had had? And then the follow-up is, do you think that the period rights movement will ever take that step toward making them period products free?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay.
We focused on the United States very clearly so because there is a lot of movement in different parts of the world, and there's a lot of exotification of menstrual issues around the world, from Kenya to India to Nepal. And surely these amazing moments of victory from Spain, looking at period leave in the workplace, and looking at UK is looking at menopausal acknowledgements in the workplace, and of course Scotland being the first in the world that is providing the menstrual products for free. I think Hawaii is looking at this as well. Some states are much further along than the others in the United States to do so. But the fact is, it's happening. It's happening right now. So, of course, for the filmmaker, it was the most delightful thing to catch the urgency of the
Mm,
conversation by following the political conversation about the tampon tax and learning along the way not only how nonsensical it is, but also why it's there, and that there is these wonderful little young ladies who are mostly ladies who are pushing this conversation further, and they are so zealous and so empowered that it really actually works. You know, it works by being diligent in sending your tampon receipts to a specific state and demand a return eh, 15 times until you
right.
piss someone off and they reply to you. You know, like it's such a funny punk way of dealing with this unfair tax. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're just
Right.
nudging and pushing and creating period pins and creating menstrual product drives. I mean, I've never seen a group of such dedicated young people who in their university days would spend Friday night while, you know, the rest of the gang is drinking at a pub or whatever. These kids would hang out with a bunch of pads and tampons, collecting little bags to then gift it to a homeless shelter or a
Mhm.
food bank nearby. Like, to me, it was the most inspiring group of youth to film and to also realize, okay, if this country will need saving, it will be, again, the young people and those of the certain age.
Right. So I know as a filmmaker, you have to make a lot of really tough decisions about what to include, what gets cut. Was there anything that stands out in your mind that you wish you could have included, but you couldn't? Just wasn't enough time?
Yeah, we had 93-minute limit.
Mm,
But this is a film for MSNBC, so it had to be a specific length to fit the format. And oh my gosh, yes, it was a torturous but necessary process. I'd say things we didn't include. You see pregnancy in the film once, and
yes.
we talk about it only as in kind of punky derogatory way about, imagine in the old time days you would just be pregnant all the time. Yikes. Which is not fair, but also tells you that the group of mostly women who were making this film were really not pregnancy prioritized in our minds. No, that's our little blind spot there. And also, what we didn't include was plenty of material collected about all kinds of gadgets and tech that has been just fascinating inventions of late to both your make your vagina lubricate again, to stop hot flashes, all kinds of fascinating what is it called?
Them
Femtech
Yep.
device
Yeah. Mhm.
that some of them are total snake oil and some of them are quite fascinating and indeed working, from cramp relievers to, ultrasound stick device that can rejuvenate your vagina from inside, apparently. So it was a fascinating little segment, and we ended up slashing it because of the time restrictions.
Got it.
Interesting.
Got it. Yeah, there was enough on Semtech that I certainly felt such optimism from watching the film? As far as where we are today versus 2000
Yeah.
and where women's health is going. So, did you feel that way at the end of the process, Lena? What are you most hopeful about in terms of periods in the future?
I'm terribly hopeful. I am hopelessly hopeful because even if, as we were building the film, the abortion ban came the stark reality. Funny, we filmed already few segment, multiple of segments, and then we saw, oh my gosh, like the conversation about tampon tax aligned perfectly with abortion ban conversation. So we kind of had to alter some conversations in the film to fit this new reality. And still, I believe that we do know more than we ever knew before. We do have these tools that can make us liberated, whether our government likes women and women's bodies or not, which is a whole another conversation about, old dude club and their ideas of ruling the world. I'm like, the more we can share this knowledge and come together and uh, demonstrate in our lives how this brings liberation, this knowing of my own body and living with my cycle, that it gives me freedom, it gives me power, it gives me empowerment, and to glow with that anywhere I go, and to speak about this and announce every time I'm in a coffee shop that I'm here for a brownie because I'm PMSing out loud, which I've been drinking. Like we are all part of removing the stigma revolution. And I can feel it's like a fingernail away from a critical mass of us bleeders to be like, fuck yeah, I'm bleeding. How are you?
Yeah. Well, thanks to your beautiful work. I mean, documentaries, this sort of work is how we reach people now. I mean, especially young people, they're not reading books. And like, this is, you're using the most powerful tool there is in our culture to help us learn about ourselves. And so I'm super appreciative for your good work. What are you working on now? What's next for
Mm.
you?
The next one is a companion piece for men. The next one is looking at the male body, looking at the cycles that men go through, looking at interesting bodily events that we don't talk about when it comes to boys and men, and also building empathy device, but for us, the feminine,
Cool.
and what the guys go through. Um,
Wow, that is so unexpected. That's like the
Great.
last thing I thought you would bring up. Very cool.
Good, good. After Periodical, I feel so empowered and liberated by my own body and so proud of having a bleeding body that I think for the first time in my life, I gained enough empathy for masculine. I've always like, oh man, that has been a status quo for maybe 10 years for my life. And now I'm like, what do men go through? Oh, you guys have this crazy thing where one summer when you're 12, you come back, hello, mother, and your voice drops and your body part starts talking on its own and you can't do it
Yeah.
about it. And no one talks to you about it. And you have all of these ejaculations out of how did that happen?
Yeah.
We're dying if no one told us about menstruation. But for a boy, suddenly you have this weapon. Suddenly you have this pressure valve that you need to release somehow. And again, there is no physical coach that will come and be like, that's right, you're turning a man now. Learn to
Yeah.
I'm like, there is
Right.
nobody that tells you that. Just your friends with porn. That's just all of a sudden, hey, look, this is funny. 3 girls, 4 guys. And boom, before you know it, you're in a dark hole of addiction and not knowing what to do with your body part.
And so important for single moms,
Mm.
right? Who are raising young boys or really, I mean, moms in relationships as well. Like, I'm having a girl and I think, thank goodness, because I'm not ready, I'm not ready for a boy. I gotta like try. To me, it's easier to be a mom to a baby with whom I have relationship to her bodily function. Catherine might have a different perspective. She has a son, but it's daunting, the idea of raising a boy and helping him through that. And I can imagine it's 100 times that if you don't have a man to guide you through. So, what a powerful resource that you're creating, not just for boys to learn about themselves, but for women to learn about the other half. And I think the other thing that you said and that I wanted to comment on is, yeah, I hear so much sort of hate toward men, and I think that that can be we don't need to punish the men that we have now for the sins of generations past. And so what you're doing is really helping us build better relationships through shared knowledge of how we each function. So,
That's exactly what I want. We need empathy because poor guys have been smashed with you're toxic, you're
yeah,
over, you cannot say anything, and how do we function? I have no idea. It sounds difficult, to say the least, to understand what it's like to be a man and a good man. And who are their role models? Who are they looking up to? Because the political spectrum is, or someone smart said, on the right, no, on the left, we want them to be like their sisters. And on the right, we want them to be like their grandfathers.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's
Beautiful.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to find out for myself and to my dear men, how does it look like? How does a man who is an ally look like? Because I feel like we have broken so many glass ceilings, integrated into all of the boys' clubs, created our own clubs, now finding even a feminine way of being in this masculine world. As an underdog, we're doing fucking well in my books. Like, I'm seeing us collaborating, I'm seeing us supporting each other as we rise. And then men are like, what? And there's still no integration. Like, if we integrated into the engineering and the NASA and everything you can do, I can do bleeding and I can go to space. Like we've been supporting that message for little girls. You can be anyone. And I know that girls are different because of that. But how are we supporting little boys of them being whatever they want, even if it's being a nurse, a kindergarten teacher, or any other non masculine demasculating professions? Because it's like, how can we poke at this masculine box and play with it and be like, what's the most wholesome and free?
Mhm.
Like,
That's right. And that's what the wise feminine really has always done is we're all pissed off. We're all coming off of this sort of bitter fight to win our independence and but here we are, just as you say, we've become more than equal. We are graduating from college at higher rates. We're earning them, we have more equality and more freedom and more everything. And our boys are really struggling. And especially our young men, it's really tragic to watch all the incels and everything. And so how beautiful that you're making a film and taking that wise, it's almost like you're taking everything you learned around your body and gathering it into a form of feminine wisdom that can be empathetic and compassionate for men. Now that you've done your own healing, you have room for others.
not we. It's
That's
literally out
beautiful.
there. Literally. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I can't wait.
When do you anticipate it coming out, or do you have is that too far out to speculate?
no, definitely it's too far out. We're in pitching development stages. So stay tuned.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for being with us. It's just been delightful to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And oh my gosh, happy end of pregnancy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we're having you back because we didn't even get to half of our questions. So
Good.
we'd
Yeah.
love to stay in touch with you, Lena. It was really a pleasure.